Yo, what's up guys? It's your man's Dylan E. Hope you're having a fantastic day. Today I'm going to be sharing the time of when my homie crashed his mom's Cadillac when we were tripping on acid. So kick back, engage in your vice of choice, and I hope you enjoy. So this story takes place back in the summer after my 10th grade, right before my 11th grade year, so the summer of my sophomore year. And this summer, my best friend Troy and I had been tripping and binging on a ton of acid, and we had been smoking endless weed. A few days before this story takes place, another longtime friend of mine at the time, Richard, I say at the time because Richard really lived up to his name. He was a dick. And since we were little kids, he would have episodes where he would become mean or even violent, especially when we were older and he started getting high and he started drinking. That's relevant to this story, so we'll get back to that. But at this time, Richard's parents were out of town. His dad was high-ranking in the army, and his mom, I'm not sure what she did, but they had a huge house way off in the countryside back in upstate New York. We had all been kicking it for a few days, and now we're just chilling at Richard's huge house. We were ripping bongs, we were smoking joints with Richard's older brother Ricardo. The whole time we were just getting high, sitting around, enjoying the short summer that we got in New York. And on the third day or so, we were kind of bored, and since it was a very rural area where he lived at, Richard decided he wanted to throw a huge party, and he wanted Troy and I to help him plan and set up this rager. Troy and I were honestly never much party goers. We would mostly just go to them to try to make money selling stuff. Whereas Richard, he was a jock. He was actually a football star up until he broke his hip and his dreams were shattered. So we both agreed to Richard, thinking it sounded like a good opportunity to make some money and probably have a lot of fun too, honestly. So Richard, being a jock, he invites all of the cheerleaders and all of the other kids who played sports. Troy and I, we go get some acid and a bunch of weed to prepare to profit as much as we can off of all of these drunk jocks that were about to show up to the party. On the day of the party, I remember Troy had to work, so I was just chilling with Richard, waiting for some people to pull up. I remember the first people that showed up were a few of the cheerleaders. Now guys, around this time from 10th to 12th grade, it was a crazy transitional point because I started smoking weed back in 7th grade, and my friends and I all instantly became the stoners. And teachers and classmates alike, they would treat us like we were shooting up or something. For years we were outcasted, we were looked down upon, and then around that time period I said of like 10th to 12th grade, almost everyone started trying weed. They were all smoking, they're all drinking, and my friends and I instantly went from the druggy loser kids into the cool rebellious kids overnight. So when all these cheerleaders showed up, the first thing they wanted to do was smoke our weed, which is hilarious because what a stereotype, right? Girls just be around smoking all your weed, they dry you up. But at the time I was mind blown watching these girls smoke because these were the same girls who for years had avoided me because I love smoking, and here they are smoking my weed. After some time, some more jocks show up and they all want to smoke too. I'm making some money already, and we all are having a good time. There's probably 8 to 10 people already at Richard's house, and we're all outside chilling at a big table. We're smoking as much as we can, and I think this one guy, he brought a bottle or two of vodka, so we're all starting to drink also. And Richard stands up out of nowhere, interrupting everyone. He's like, yo, I'm trying to trip. Let's take some of that acid. So I grabbed the tabs and he's like, you're gonna trip with me too, right? And I'm just considering all the jocks that are there. They aren't really the vibe to be tripping around, but I could tell he was so dead set on me taking it with him, and knowing how he is, I knew he wouldn't stop pressuring me unless I did it, especially because this was what I was known for. Everyone knew me as the acid guy, and since it was true, I was the acid guy. I knew it was nothing that I couldn't handle, so I took a tab with him, and immediately, Richard, he's crazy, so he goes, yeah, now we gotta go pick up this other kid that I had never even heard of before, who lives in a town that's like 30 minutes away. And also, he says we still have to pick up Troy from his job at Kmart in our city, which of course I want Troy to be there. He says, I got my mom's car keys, I'm driving. So I'm like, whoa, I hope this guy knows what he's doing, because his parents drove a new black Cadillac Escalade, and they had conveniently left it there with the keys. And it's so crazy because his brother Ricardo, who was a few years older than us, I'm pretty sure, I think it was meant for him to get them groceries or anything that they might have needed. I'm pretty sure Richard didn't even have a license yet. I think I definitely knew at the time I was risking my life by getting into that car in so many different ways, more than one, legally, mortally, and all that. But being young and stupid, I decided I would do it. Because from my perspective, if you think about it like this, I'm coming up on acid. I go hang out with a bunch of jocks, go hang out with a bunch of cheerleaders that I'm not even close to at all. Or I could go ride in this sick caddy and trip with the homie, risking my life. So I chose the latter. I take my chances. So we head out for this town that's like 30 minutes away, an even more rural area, leaving all these people behind back at Richard's house to do whatever they wanted to it. So we finally show up at this address where the whole street was shaded. It was totally covered by willow trees, and the road was cut straight through the forest. And this boy, who is even younger than us, he comes out with this soft, almost high-pitched voice, like his balls had barely even dropped. Honestly, I can't remember this kid's name, so I'm gonna just call him Jackson. Jackson was like 15, probably, maybe even younger. Jackson hops in, I tell him, yo, what's up? Nice to meet you, bro. And Richard instantly gives him a hit of the acid. And while he's still buckling his seatbelt, I could tell he's nervous, so I ask him, you ever tripped before? And he tells me, nah, this is my first time ever tripping. So me being the acid guy, I try to give him as much info as I can. I'm like, oh, it's gonna last like 8 to 12 hours. Come up's really intense, but after you peak, it's usually more manageable. Just basic background, a little piece of paper he just had put on his tongue. And since it's a dead-end road, Richard decides, hey, let's go to the end of the road and we can rip the bubbler that we brought with us. In case you guys don't know what a bubbler is, or you call it something else, it's like a little pipe that's mixed with a bong, so somewhere in the middle. And I'm starting to feel the acid coming on as we're smoking. The sun is starting to go down. The trees are breathing in and out just as much as they are swaying in the wind left to right. Everything looks like it has a film grain over top of it, and my vision has become super high definition. I'm seeing the patterns connecting the universe all come together in my visual field, and I'm like, yo, we need to get out of here right now. So I tell Richard, let's go get Troy from Kmart back in our city. So we head off through the forest road. We're driving for probably like 3 minutes tops away from Jackson's house, and Richard is whipping the car like he just stole it. We're going like 60 miles per hour down a 40-mile-per-hour rural road, and Richard flies by the exit for the interstate, and within milliseconds Richard notices and yells out, yo, we missed the exit. And he just suddenly spins the wheel like it's a boat. I'm talking multiple full wheel rotations towards the exit that was to our left that we had just flew past, and bro didn't even push the brakes at all. I mean, not even a little tap. He just changed our whole entire trajectory at 60 miles per hour, and we just go straight towards the guardrail, off a ledge, down this huge hill. We crash land into the bottom of the hill. We hit it front bumper first, and I watch Richard's head smash onto the steering wheel, and he just goes unconscious. All of a sudden, I'm just seeing green. There's no more road. There's no more houses. There's nothing but grass all around us on every side. So I'm like, bruh. And Jackson, he's freaking out. He's already having the worst first acid trip ever. I'm shaking Richard like, yo, get up. We gotta get out of here. But he's just totally KO'd. So we're just stuck there like sitting ducks. Eventually, he comes back to it, and without saying anything, Richard just puts it in reverse, speeds back up the hill, gets back onto the road somehow, and I really gotta give it to General Motors, dude. I don't think most cars would have been able to do that. It got us back up even when it was all smashed up. Richard then tells me, yo, I'm way too messed up, I can't drive anymore, and that me needs to drive us back 30 minutes to town to pick up Troy, and then another 20 minutes from town back to Richard's house that was in the middle of nowhere. And I'm like, dude, I don't know. I only have my permit. I didn't have my license yet at the time. At this point, I'm tripping on the acid. It's totally pitch dark outside. I'm completely unfamiliar with the area that we're in, but Richard keeps insisting. He's like, it's the only way. I can't do it myself. You have to do it, Dylan. So I know we couldn't stay there. We were all gonna get arrested, so I just locked in. Tripping on acid, got a car full of other kids on acid. I only got my permit, and now we have a whole journey to get back. I lock in, I get us all the way to Kmart. Troy comes out of the store, he sees me driving the caddy, and he's dying laughing like, yo, what is going on right now? Because he knew I didn't have my license. All of a sudden, he sees Jackson having a bad trip in the back. Jackson looks traumatized, like he had just seen a ghost. Richard's out of his mind. He's not saying anything that even makes sense remotely. Troy realizes that the situation is crazy. He hops in, and as we're going from Kmart back to Richard's, I remember we saw a bunch of cops, and every cop we saw tripping on the acid, I could feel all of our tension shoot up into space past the atmosphere and then back down to earth once we had realized we were not getting pulled over. And eventually we finally made it back, and more people had already shown up to the party. Everyone was already sloppy drunk. The party had just kept going without the host, which I find hilarious with who the host was particularly. But when we got back, we were all just chilling, except for Jackson, who was having a really bad time. He was sitting all quiet, his eyes were dilated like saucers. All the things I had mentioned earlier that I personally had considered reasons why it might not be such a good idea to trip at this party, but I knew I could handle, Jackson clearly was not prepared or expecting such considerations. Richard at some point had noticed that Jackson was having a super bad time, and Richard started bullying this kid that none of us even knew besides Richard himself. Richard had invited Jackson, Richard had given Jackson his first ever trip, and then Richard all of a sudden started calling Jackson names. Richard was making fun of Jackson. He was just being cruel to him and making his trip way worse for no reason when he was already having a bad trip from Richard crashing the car. And everyone began to take notice, and they all got quiet. They all started staring at Richard, and I don't know if it was all the drugs that we were on plus the alcohol, or if it was something more psychological within his ego because he had just crashed his mom's car maybe, but Richard just kept going at Jackson and going and going, and everyone at the party, especially the girls, were getting really concerned. I told Richard, I was like, bro, you invited this kid here, now you're purposely giving him an even worse trip than you already gave him by crashing your mom's car. What's your problem right now, dude? But he was like a rabid dog. He wasn't hearing anything but his own intrusive thoughts. This is why I said that Richard lives up to his name of Dick, because he was having some sort of psychological episode and he could not be stopped. So the girls started trying to comfort Jackson. They're trying to protect him from Richard. It was like they went into full mommy mode within seconds after seeing an innocent boy that needed help. And Richard's brother, who was the only person who was bigger than Richard, had to physically restrain him and redirect his mind onto something else. So people started leaving in droves at this point. It was just bad vibes. So everybody got out of there. It was pretty late, except for some girls that were staying the night. I specifically remember one of them stayed around me, and she kept asking me, oh, smoke with me, smoke with me. And then she kept asking me, oh, where you gonna sleep tonight? Basically inviting me to join her. And she wasn't unattractive, but was obviously way too drunk. So I turned her down, which I like to think was the right thing to do because even being 16, I knew that was super sketchy. So we all ended up going to sleep. And the next day when he was sober, I don't know how, but Jackson got up out of there before I could even notice. And by then, Richard was already planning his next party later that same night while we were smoking for breakfast. On that second night, I remember the homie Donnie, he brought a huge dab rig, and I got blessed to be able to take my first ever real dab in my life. I remember I was hitting a lot of wax on vapes back then, and not like carts, guys. I don't mean carts, I mean actual dab vapes, so you have to put the wax right on top of the coil directly, and then you have to repack it every single time. So I was ready. I remember him being all proud of me, like, whoa, you cleared that like a champ. And that meant so much to me from Donnie, because him, Troy, and I, we were all the plugs back in my high school. So it was this kind of mutual respect that I really couldn't explain to you, but if you know, you know. Later on that second night, my wallet ended up getting stolen somehow, and we found it later the next day, empty. It was all cut up, and it was next to Richard's phone, which was all smashed up, and they were both on the side of the road. I used to believe it was his weirdo neighbor that was around our age, but now that I'm looking back at it, I definitely think it was Richard, just living up to his name, being crazy as always. But I hope you guys enjoyed this story. I'll see you in the next one. Peace.